by the phone, as she does on Tuesday, is Holly Signorelli. Holly is the money therapist. She's a CPA and author of a book called Do You Know Where Your Money Is? This story deals with, do you know where your spouse's money is? Because you see, some 13 million Americans hide money from their spouse. They either have a bank account or a credit card account that their spouse knows absolutely nothing about. That, in fact, is financial infidelity. Holly, welcome back to Health, Wealth, and Happiness.
Yeah, absolutely. Great to be here.
Were you surprised by the numbers?
I'm not, because in my practice, which I've had for 26 years, I've worked with so many, business owners and couples, and this is a big problem. It's the number one reason for divorce, and even if you're not getting divorced, if you're fighting, you are most likely fighting about money. It's the number one thing that people fight about, and it can be anything that falls into the subject of money. But definitely, if you are hiding money or not telling your significant other about things like credit card debt, or that you've gotten behind on your bills because you're trying to fix it behind the scenes. So a lot of people, they're not necessarily doing this to betray their loved one. It's that they think they can get out of it because, they don't want to get in trouble maybe. Like I said, they racked up some credit card debt. They don't want the other person to know because they think they can fix it. And you really should be honest with each other about it.
I thought it was interesting that 41% of the people who do this say that they will spend more than $100 without their spouse knowing anything about it. Half that many say they spend up to $500 on items that their spouse knows nothing about. What's the matter with their spouse? Are they asleep at the wheel?
I think for me, what I think is a joint account is a good idea, but only for the few basic bills that everyone pays, like their mortgage or their rent payment and their utilities and groceries, and just keep your joint account to those basic bills so that you're each putting money into that account. And it may not be the same amount of money because somebody might make more money, but the point is that if people are putting money into the joint account and they're also putting money into their long-term savings and investment accounts, then usually people don't worry about how the other person spends money. I mean, I know I'm that way. My husband, if he wants to buy a toy, as long as he's contributing to our trips and our investments and our household bills, it doesn't matter to me how he spends that money. And that's what I see in my office all the time. It's that when people are complaining about how their spouse spends money, it's because they're not contributing to the family first.
We just finished the Christmas holidays, and every year there are these ads on TV. A couple wakes up on Christmas Day, and the husband says to the wife, "Your surprise is outside." And she says, "What?" And she goes to the door and opens the door, and sitting in the driveway is a brand new $60,000 car with a bow on it.
Right.
Now, I don't know what your reaction to that is, but mine is, is that really what the kind of relationship you want to have? That you're going to go out and spend $60,000 on an automobile without consulting with your spouse? Come on.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a lot, because it affects both parties. So if you have that money, if you are wealthy enough to go out and buy that, and it's not going to affect the couple's finances, then absolutely that's okay. But when people do finance things, and I've seen this all the time too, where it's like a beautiful piece of jewelry, and not anywhere close to what you're talking about, but maybe it's a couple $1,000 or $5,000, and then you're making payments on it. Or when somebody upgrades somebody's wedding ring, that can get very pricey, and then the next thing you know, they're actually both contributing to this, so it's no longer a gift because the person that received the gift is also contributing to the bill, right?
You bet. You bet. Now, since we're talking about this, what are some of the signs that you might want to look for in financial infidelity?
A lot of what I see in my practice is somebody's not contributing as much as they should to the joint account because, again, that depends on the agreement that the couple has. Like, if somebody makes a lot more money than the other person. Maybe they put 75% in, and maybe the person making less money is only putting 25% in. But that's okay, because that's the agreement. And maybe the person making less money does other things at home, like taking care of the house. But typically the person with less money, if they're wanting something and they've created some credit card debt, they may suddenly appear to be having some cash flow problems, like maybe they pay for dinner every 3 times that you go out, and suddenly they can't do that. And maybe you're looking around and there's some new, things that have been purchased in the house somewhere. And that's really important, because credit card debt and getting behind on your credit card payments affects your credit, and that absolutely affects your spouse. Even if you keep your finances separate, it would affect you if you guys went to get maybe a remodel loan or upgrade your house to a bigger house, and someone's credit was lower and they weren't able to do that. So that's why it's so important to talk to your spouse about these kind of things.
Many times, too, you'll see things coming to the house that you didn't order, didn't know anything about, and it was purchased online by your spouse. Isn't that a form of financial infidelity?
Well, it can be, because if you're not telling someone, again, that's where if you are paying your share of the bill and you are putting money into your investment accounts and you're taking care of those priorities, then for me, I know if Amazon comes to my house and my husband's bought something, he's going to show me. So it's not going to be a secret. That's the thing, because really, if you are doing your obligations and you want to buy something even that's expensive and you're paying for it with cash, there's no reason why you can't. Hey, look what I got! Isn't this awesome? Share it with your spouse. But especially if it's the other direction where you've put yourself in a bind, it's very important to share that with your spouse, and you should be able to, because people do make mistakes, and then you work through them together. That's what marriage is about.
Holly, what is your thought about having separate banking accounts or separate credit cards?
I'm a big fan of that. I always say keep your finances separate, but not secret. I have my own business accounts, I have my own personal accounts, my own investment accounts, and I think it's a good idea. But like I said, it's not a secretive thing. It's just I don't want to have to worry about a person, having a debit card on my account and paying for something. That's, again, what the joint account is all about, so that after you've fulfilled your requirements for your long-term savings and your bills every month, if I want to buy a nice pair of shoes, I want to be able to do that and not have to worry about it. And I want my husband to be able to do the same thing. And that's, again, what I see in my practice all the time. People, when they argue about money, they don't realize it until you talk it through with them, but they don't realize that the real problem is not what their spouse bought, but whether they were contributing what they should have for the household and the kids.
And I contend that the infidelity begins, or the seeds are planted long before you ever get married, because you don't talk to your soon-to-be husband or wife about their feelings about finance and how they handle money and how they spend and what they spend it on and how do they handle a budget. If you don't discuss those things, you get what you either don't plan for or don't talk about. That's my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually had posted a video this morning about financial infidelity, because it was based on somebody that was getting married and had credit card debt, and they didn't want to tell their significant other or their fiance because they knew that they could get out of it, and they could. It wasn't something so bad that they couldn't get out of. But I told them, even though you can get out of it, and that's important to do before you get married, it's not necessary, but it's important if you can. You still shouldn't be embarrassed to tell your fiance that you are, have put yourself into some credit card line, because credit cards are a big problem in this country. So there's no need to be embarrassed about racking up some credit cards. It's about changing the behavior and the pattern versus keeping it from your significant other, because then you're kind of starting things off in the wrong way to begin with.
On the other hand, one thing you don't want to do is marry somebody and then find out, honey, we need to sit down and talk, because there's something that I haven't discussed with you, and you find
Right.
out that you are in debt up the yang, and you didn't know anything at all about it.
Oh, yeah, I think that's exactly right. I mean, you should not get into a marriage with somebody and then to find out that they have debt, because if you knew ahead of time, you could just plan accordingly, okay? We're going to be engaged, and, you know, we're going to work through this and get this debt paid off so that we can start out right, because a lot of times obviously when people are getting together, they are deciding which house to live into, and sometimes they are buying a house together because they're going to upgrade, or maybe just because they each want to have a new house together. So these are things that are very relevant with credit card debt and your credit score, absolutely.
No doubt about it. And these are important things. Do you discuss these types of things in your book?
Yeah, I do. A lot of what I talk about has to do with the overspending and the credit card debt because of the emotions like desire and instant gratification and jealousy that cause us to overspend. And almost always that creates credit card debt no matter what income level you're at. That's why we have 50% of the population that doesn't have savings, and there's a huge amount of people, at least 30 to 40%, that have credit card debt that's way out of proportion to their income. We're not talking about a few $1,000s. We're talking about credit card debt that's in proportion to how much they make in a whole year.
And it's absolutely mind-boggling when you find out what the average American owes in credit card debt. It certainly boggles my mind.
Yeah, it's a big problem. I'm trying to work on that problem with the courses that I'm creating nowadays, because a lot of people that are making 6 digits also have a large amount of credit card debt. So it's kind of like that. They're saying that I always say is, you know, how you save and spend now is how you save and spend when you have more money. So when people have started to make more money in the last few years, they've continued to rack up more credit card debt, even though they're making more money. And they have the cash flow to pay their payments, but they're still getting more credit card debt. We had $68 billion of additional credit card debt last year alone.
Wow.
Yeah.
For those people who would like to get your book, How Do You Know Where Your Money Is? Or do you know where your money is? How can they get a copy of it?
It's on Amazon, and it's also on my product page on themoneytherapist.com. And I have a get out of debt little video series. It's only $27, but it goes over those emotions so that you can create a plan to get out of debt. But first you have to understand the self-sabotage mechanisms that are in place that are keeping you in debt. So I've made it very affordable because we have such a big problem with this in our society, and it's affecting everyone.
Holly, I thank you so much for coming and sharing on health, wealth, and happiness, and look forward to having you back next Tuesday.
Okay, see you next week.